broadcasting, which is like got it. ஆம்னே விட்டுடலாம்ல எது ஆமா அது அப்ப எடிட் பண்ணிக்கலாம் நான் அது இன்னும் ரெக்கார்டிங் போயிட்டே இருக்கேன்
இப்போ ரெக்கார்ட் பண்ண Mr. Panikar.
Yes. Hello.
You can hear me, sir?
I can hear you. I can hear you,
Mr. Alluri.
Hello. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. So we'll start the session, sir. I will start in now. Very good morning to one and all present here. So we now come to the third day of the faculty development program on AR and VR. So today's session will base on modeling 3D objects. The first session. The second session will be animation slash simulation, both on AR and VR. These two sessions will be handled by Mr. Pradyumna Panikar and Mr. Alluri Venkat. Mr. Pradyumna Panikar is a senior designer at Auto V-Race and has been creating 3D environments and art for last 4 years. He is a graduate of RV College of Architecture in Bangalore and uses his knowledge in lightning volumes and space to ideate, design, and optimize virtual environments for AR/VR. He has delivered several high-fidelity, scalable, enterprise-ready projects for companies such as IFB Industries, Godrej, Royal Dutch Shell, and Accenture. Now coming to the second speaker, Mr. Alluri Venkat. He is a 3D artist who holds a professional degree in game arts. He has been working in game design and 3D art for past few years and is very much passionate about hard surface and organic modeling, texturing, and their integration with VR environments. He is also closely involved in the design and development of District M, the first ever rhythm-based VR game being developed in India. Very good morning to both of you gentlemen. And now I will now request Mr. Pradyumna Panikar, sir, to take over the session. Sir, it's over to you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Pradyumna. I'm a designer at Outverse, and in this session, and in this session today, we will be introducing you all to the basic concepts of 3D modeling, animation, as well as simulations in this software called Blender. So that being said, our first session. I'm sorry. Can everyone hear me?
Sorry, sir. Sorry,
yes, sir.
Sir. Hello.
Everyone can hear me, right?
Sir, can you? Yeah, we can. Can you, if you don't mind, can you keep the video on for few minutes only, sir? If you don't mind, sir, because we are capturing capturing the screenshot. That's why, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes. So as I was saying, our first session will be on how to model out 3D models using this software, and how to apply materials to it. So Venkat will be taking over that session, and in this he will speak to you about the basic concepts of 3D modeling, applying materials to them. So over to you, Venkat.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Venkat, and today I'll be taking the presentation on 3D modeling. So I'll start by sharing my screen initially. Can you guys see my screen? Like, I just need some one person to confirm.
Yes, we can see it, Venkat.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see it. It's clear.
Okay, cool. So first thing is we have to download Blender. And to do that, we'll just open up Google. Excuse me, I'm having an issue right now. My whole screen is going black. Is it like same on the recording part?
It's visible, sir. It's on
Okay,
Google
okay,
page only.
yeah.
No issue.
Okay, cool.
But first you'll have to unlock your device.
So first thing first is like we have to download Blender to use it. So right now I'll show you how to get Blender in your PC. And the simplest way to do it is like just open Google and type Blender or Blender 3D. Like no matter what you type, you'll still get the same thing. And the first link visible will be blender.org, which is like homepage of Blender. And the moment you'll open it, on the front page only you'll have an option to download Blender. So here hit download and just, and in front of you you'll have the latest version available of Blender. If you want, you can get a previous version, but it's highly recommended to always use the latest version. And once you'll hit download, you'll see in a couple of minutes it will start downloading. I already have this version, so I'm not going to download it. And now the next step is I'll show you how to install Blender easily. So Blender is a pretty small software. Like right now the one which I showed you would be around 170 to 180 MB, and installing it is also pretty easy. Just double click on the setup, press next, accept all of the terms and conditions, and press next again. Like here it will show you on what drive you want to install it. It is recommended to have it installed in your C drive, but you can have it installed anywhere. And press next and just click install. Good thing about Blender is it's a free software, it's open source, there are like no strings attached to it. And while installing, it won't install anything extra, there won't be any ads or anything. It's just like the normal software which you have, that's it, and nothing else will be installed. Okay, now to start Blender, once you have Blender installed, you can just search Blender in your PC, or you'll also have a shortcut in. Okay, what happened? You'll also have a shortcut in your desktop installed. Yeah. Okay, something's wrong. Like, yeah, this will be your icon. Just click on it, and the moment. Okay, since the video call started, something is wrong with my display drivers. I'm not sure. Okay. So, okay, I feel like there's some technical issue happening right now with my PC. Can you guys give me a minute to sort it out?
Sure, sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Vijay, just 2 minutes. I think he just needs to probably restart his PC. Just 2 minutes.
No issue, sir. No issue, sir. You can continue that gap, sir.
Okay. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
we
sir.
can
Yes,
hear
sir.
you.
Yeah, okay. I'll restart my screen share again. Is my screen?
Wait a second. Just I will make you as a co-host.
Okay, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, now you can share your screen, sir.
Okay, is my screen visible?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
visible. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about later. I guess there was a small graphic driver issue because of which I had to restart my PC. But right now it's all sorted. Okay. So I'll continue from where I left. Once you have Blender installed, like you'll have an icon with this symbol. It's like a orange color dot with a blue circle on it. You can either search for Blender in your PC by typing up its name, or you can just like I have it here, or you can just click on an icon. Once you open Blender, you'll have like your UI would be something like this. You'll have an artwork done by someone. Like every version of Blender will have an artwork done by someone. You just need to click anywhere and like the artwork is gone, and now you'll be on your 3D scene. Right now, once you have Blender open in your scene, you can see three things. First one is the camera, second one is a 3D object, and the third one is a light. So right now for today's presentation, we don't need any of these like the camera or the light. So I'll be just removing them and just and concentrate on the cube. So to give a basic introduction on how 3D works, basically what 3D shapes are just normal geometries which we have in our day-to-day lives, and whatever we make in 3D are all started up from these basic shapes only. And to explain how these 3D shapes are processed by a PC, it is pretty simple. So every 3D shapes is made up of vertices, edges and faces. And to be more accurate, this dot which we can see here is a vertex, this line which we see here is an edge, and this face which we see here and this square which we see here is a face. And with the help of these three things, everything in 3D is made. And to explain it more technically, basically each one of these points are a vector in 3D space. And once we have two vectors connected, they form an edge, which is this line. And once we have three or more edges connected with each other, they form a face, and which we can see right now. And right now, even though this is a vector with four sides, like a face with four sides, PCs normally calculate them in terms of triangles bit because it is easier for it to compile all of the triangles when there are many faces in it. But to make our work easier, most of the 3D artists, we all work with quads because it's just easier, and most of the tools they support uh, quad workflow very properly. So right now I'll start by giving a basic introduction to Blender and its UI. Once you have Blender open, to rotate your 3D viewport, you just need to click your middle mouse button or the scroller wheel and start moving your mouse. Like right now I'm moving my mouse left, and so with the cube being in focus, my camera is rotating around the cube. When I move it right, my camera will also move towards right. And and same way I can move up, down, anywhere. This way I can see everything in my 3D viewport in whatever axis, direction, angle I want. And the next thing is, how do we move the 3D object in a 3D view space? So here we have few options here. First one is move, second one is rotate, and third one is scale. To move our object, we'll hit on move, and then here we'll have this 3D gizmo, which will always be in the center of our object. To move it in x-axis, here we have a red color line. While we'll move our mouse on it, it'll just highlight the red line, and we can see it's moving in the x-axis. So here the red line is indicated as x-axis, here the green line is indicated as y-axis, and the blue line is indicated as z-axis. If we ever get confused, we always have our indications here, where we can see the blue indicates z-axis, the y indicates green, and the x indicates red color. Okay, and to move them on the same axis is same as moving in this is moving in x-axis, this is moving in y-axis, and this is moving in z-axis. And like as we move our things in 3D, we can also rotate them, and for that we have a rotate tool. Now here, previously, these for move tool, they were all arrows which sort of indicate on what direction they'll move. In rotate tool, we have semicircular lines which will sort of indicate on what axis they will rotate. Like here, when I'm clicking on the green one, it'll rotate on the y-axis. If I'm clicking on the blue one, it'll rotate on the x-axis, and same goes when I'm clicking on the blue one, it'll rotate on the z-axis. Same way, we also have scaling. Scaling indicates on if we want to make our asset big or small. When I'm moving it on the red color, it scales on the x-axis. Moving it from the green one will scale on the y-axis, and moving it from the blue one will scale on the z-axis. This way, we can scale our assets on whatever size we want, and we can, even if we have some specific inputs which we want to give, like the whole cube must be 3 meters in height or 2 meters in height, we can also do that by our transform panel. Here in a transform panel, we have certain values, like x we have 0.2, y we have minus 0.2, and z we have minus 0.06. This indicates the position of its origin. Like I said previously, the gizmo would always be on the center of our object, which also indicates its location. So right now here we have some point values, which means this is not properly on the center. To bring our asset in the center, we just need to hit 0 on everything. 0, 0, 0. Right now you can see this cube moves slightly, but right now it's perfectly on the center of our view space. And also when we rotate, on what degree we are rotating can also be seen here. So if we want to specifically rotate it in 30 degrees, we can give our input from here. Like if I want it in 60, I can give my input here. And like if I also want to rotate it in z axis, also I can give multiple inputs here. So no matter what sort of input we give on xyz axis, our asset would be rotated on those bases. And right now, suppose we have moved our asset in such a way that we don't want it, like we have given a input by mistake. Like most of the software has Control Z to go back. Even in Blender, hitting Control Z would bring it back to its initial phase location. This would also include, like if we have moved our asset, it will also bring it back to its original position. If we have scaled it low, down or up, Control Z would also bring that back into its original position. So now let me start modeling and show how it's done in 3D. So till now, everything I've been doing was in object mode. So object mode is something where we can view all of our objects, but we can't edit them. Right now, I'm going to start how to edit a 3D object. And to come into edit mode, we just need to press tab. And once we hit tab, we are in edit mode. And once we're in edit mode, we can see that we have three options on top of here. One indicates vertex, the second one indicates an edge, and the third one indicates a face. And based on what I'm selecting, a certain thing is being highlighted. Once I have the vertex selected, I can see that this vertex got highlighted. Once I have the edge selected, the edge is being highlighted slightly. And once I have the face selected, like basically nothing would be highlighted in face selection, because what we have in front of us is a face, but it's just to indicate what's selected. We'll have a small highlights in here. Now this is an like to go back again, because this is a bit important. Right now this is the vertex mode, this is the edge mode where an edge can be selected, and this is the face mode where an face can be selected. And as I was moving my whole object in 3D view, I can also move my vertices, edges, or face with in my 3D space if it's selected. So suppose right now I have this vertex selected and I'm trying to move it, I can switch on my move tool again and I can move my certain vertex. Right now we can see that this vertex is moving on the y-axis because I have the green arrow selected. Same like same way I can select a different vertex and move them. This can create some weird shapes, but yeah, this is how it moves. And now we have our edge selected. This way we can move up an edge. So once we are moving an edge, basically what happens is with whatever vertices that edge is selected starts to move. And same thing when we have our face selected, with whatever edges the whole face is selected will all move. So this is just a way. So whenever we start to edit anything, based on if it's a smaller spatial edit, we do it with vertex. If it's a medium level edit, we do it with edges. And for some bigger changes, we do it with face. And now let me show you how we actually create shapes in 3D. So right now I had a cube, but let me add another one and I'll show you how to add shapes as well. So here we had our add menu. Its shortcut is Shift A. Once we click on add, we'll see many features, but what we need is a mesh and a cube. Now, once I'll hit cube, we have a cube in a 3D view space. And till now, I've been showing up how to move different faces and all, but I haven't actually started on different tools. So right now I'll go on with different tools. So if we want to use any of the tools for editing in 3D, first thing is we have to be in edit mode. To be into edit mode, we have to press tab, and now we are in edit mode. The moment we're in edit mode, we can see a lot more new options have popped out on the side. So the first option is add cube, which is the same thing here. Once I'll hit on add, I can always add up a new mesh because I already have it here, so I won't be doing it. Next one is exclude. So what exclude indicates is like, suppose if I have a face selected and I'll hit exclude, we can see that right now another face just started to spawn from the face which was selected. So initially I had a cube with 6 faces, and right now once I hit exclude, we can see that a new face emerged from the previously selected faces, and at the same time it also created 4 new extra faces on the side and 1 on the top, which indicated right now we have just added 5 more faces to our 3D asset. And the next tool is insert. Insert means once we have a certain face selected and we press insert, like basically is moving this yellow dot, we can see that new and smaller faces are being added inside. So what insert does is like whatever face is selected and we press insert on it, it'll just add up a new face inside. So previously I was spawning a face which was coming out outside with exclude, but insert adds a face inside. And the next tool is bevel. Bevel is usually used to smooth out edges. So right now I have these 2 edges selected and I want to make this part smoother. I don't want it to be this sharp here. Like, then I'll just select these 2 edges, press bevel and move the scroller. Like, as you can see, this has been divided into 2 parts. Like now, if with all of the face selected, if I'll hit bevel again, it'll try to smooth it out more, but let's keep it here. And to show the other faces, let me just take up a fresh new cube and go back to edit mode. Here we have a loop cut. So what loop cut does is it'll add a loop in whatever axis our mouse is facing on. So right now my mouse is facing the Z axis, so it'll add a loop on the Z axis. Right now it's on the Y axis, so it'll add a loop on the Y axis. And basically that's not the only thing. Whenever I add a loop, even though right now it's being represented on the Z axis, but whatever loop we are adding also has a certain X value limitation, so it as well. But either way, if you want to subdivide a cube from anywhere, we just need to use this loop tool and it will keep on adding loops in between. And the next tool is knife tool. What knife tool does is like, if right now we were having up a whole loop automatically being created on the center, but suppose if we want to manually input points like from the 3D viewport, then we can just select knife tool and start cutting up things. Like, and wherever I'll click my mouse, it'll create an edge there and also create a vertex as well to create a whatever shape we want. And once I have my cut tool finalized with whatever shape I have, I just need to press enter and we have this shape made here. So right now, basically these are the basic tools which we have in Blender, and I have showed like how they work, but now I'll actually start with creating an actual asset. So for the first example, I'll be creating up a very simple table. To create a table, like the most common shape used on tables are rectangles. So I will start off with a rectangle as well. I'll take a rectangle. I'll scale it down to make this the top part of the table, and then I'll scale it up a bit on y-axis to have some width to it. Like, to make sure this is a base, we have a pretty less amount of height and a width. Let's just imagine this is the proportions from the top view of a table. And the next part is I have to create legs. So to create legs, now I need to add loops in between. So right now I'll add one loop from the x-axis and another loop from the y-axis. Once I have these 2 things done, next thing is I need to create up its legs. To do that, what I'll do is I'll take up this edge and use bevel tool. So once I'll use bevel tool, we can see that what a loop I had initially is being splitted into two different loops. I'll do that till I reach a certain edge. Next, I'll select this loop as well and repeat the same process using bevel to bring these two loops to the edge. And next thing is, now let's create the legs of our table. So for that, I'll just simply select these four sides and I'll hit extrude, which is this tool, and just take it down. So now we can see that I have a pretty basic shape of a table done, which is pretty basic. There's nothing like no special detail to it. If we want, we can add more, like let's say I want these edges to be much more smoother. So what I can do here is I can use the bevel tool to make this part a bit more smoother. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I can make this part bit more smoother to have a a bit more softer surface here. And now I have a very basic model of a table done. Let's bring it up on and not so that it's above the ground level. When I say above the ground level, what I mean is like whatever asset I have is on the positive z-axis and not on the negative z-axis. Right now, if we'll check its location, its height is at 1.6 meters. So basically, I know this is pretty big for a table, but it's still on the positive axis to indicate. And next thing is like now we have a table, so obviously we do need a chair to have a combination of a chair and table. So even to create a chair, I'll just take up another cube. I'll bring it to the side to just indicate like this is the position where my chair would be. I'll follow the same steps of making this cube smaller in the z-axis to indicate. Okay, let's make it a bit more smaller. Now I'll follow the same steps I did for the table to make the process which I showed to make the legs for this table. I'll follow the same process to make the legs for this chair as well. I'll add two loops from both from the X and Y axis. And once I have that thing done, I'll bevel them out to create corner faces. Okay, something's wrong. Okay, sorry. Looks like there has been some sort of bug in it. Okay. Now with them selected, let me, yeah, sorry about that. I have selected the wrong tool here. Now with bevel, I'll again follow the same steps to create its legs, but this time I'll make sure the legs are the faces which will form the legs are smaller than in terms of length and like width with what I had from the table. Again, I'll select the faces from the bottom side and then I'll extrude them again to create its legs. Right now we can see that we have the legs of the chair created, and now what we need is a backrest. So to create the backrest, we can simply select these three faces, select on extrude, bring it out, and like here we have a pretty basic low poly chair and table done. Now comes the next part. Now, even though I have created up my 3D asset, they all look gray in color. What we right now, what we need to do is like add some material to it to make it look realistic. So what a material means is like right now everything in a world has its own properties. Like wood looks like wood, cement looks like cement, floor which is made up of marble or tiles, they look like marbles or tiles. Basically, whenever we create anything in 3D, they are just 3D assets with no physical properties to them, and to add some visual impact to it to make a wood look like wood. So basically right now I have a chair which is supposed to be made out of wood. That means I have to give this guy, like this asset, a wood material. So my next step is to create a material for this thing. So right now I have my asset selected, and on the right hand side I have a couple more options. Here on the second last option, which is a circle red in colors, which says material property. I'll go into it, and right now I'll add up a new material by pressing up new. So a new material has been added. By default, it will have a name as material 001. I'll just rename this thing into wood. So I have a wood, so I have assigned a material with wood in it. But even though I have written here wood, it's not showing anything. It's still this, it's still showing up in same gray color. So right now my next step is to add a material to it. To do that, I will go into my shading window where I have the shader like this. So right now this is the material settings of the asset. So what I'll do is like I'll just need to import few assets here. So the shortcut to add anything is Control Shift T, and we'll have a file explorer on a scene where we just need to find whatever asset material we have and import it in our scene. So office. So here I already have a couple of materials there prepared for this presentation. So I won't be showing the process of creating the materials, but I'll be bringing them in. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Okay, looks like there's another bug going on with my PC. Oh yeah, so a lot of like things not working properly happens a lot while you use any of the 3D softwares. So always be prepared to just follow like redo a couple of your steps again if you feel like it's not working properly. So right now we can see that I have added up a wooden material and there is some sort of wood information on it, but it looks pretty weird and bad. You can see that there's some weird lines forming here which doesn't looks like wood. Here we have something which looks like wood, but it's pretty big in scaling and all, and here also it's forming some weird lines. Basically, even though this asset has wood properties, it's not looking like wood. So right now what we need to do is fix this asset, and to fix it there's a process called as UVs. So what does UV stand for? UV is basically representing whatever we have made in 3D into a 2D plane. So right now I have this table selected and I'm in my UV editor, and as of now we can see that we have some faces here which no one can understand because it's not sorted out. Nothing in the UV's panel is sorted out, which means that right now this face it's not being projected properly in 2D to actually show that what's happening. So here right now I'll start splitting up my whole asset into different parts by clicking on these edges. I'll press Ctrl E to bring out the edge menu and just press on the option mark seam. Right now you can see that whatever I have selected has a red line on it. So this way I can split out all of my faces in a 3D asset. And let's break this thing from here as well. So basically right now what I have did is like I had the top part of like the upper base part of a table, and I've splitted this whole table into two parts. One is the lower part and like other is the upper part. Now with everything selected, we can select everything by pressing A, and like and like if we'll hit U, we'll have unwrap options. Once I'll hit unwrap, now we can see that previously these are all some weird random squares forming on. Right now once I hit unwrap, we can see that the top face part which I have selected initially is here, and the bottom face part which I've selected also previously is here, and both of them together right now indicates what shape it is. Here we can see like this is a like here we can see this is the face which I've selected from the top part is this one, and like the faces next to it which are these are also next to it as well. So basically what I did to explain what I did in simple way is that I have opened up my asset in such a way that right now my 3D asset is being represented in a 2D space. So here we don't have a third, like here we have X, Y, and Z axis where we have all of our 3D things viewed in 3D. But in a UV editor, we only have two axes, X and Y. We don't have the Z axis. So we have to make sure we have to open up all of the assets to make them appear as if there are in 2D. So if there are certain faces which can't be represented in 2D, we just need to break them up and split them and move them aside. So right now, let me do the same thing with the other legs as well. Let me select these inner lines and I'll hit mark seam on them. And let's also do the same thing for these faces. Let me select these four faces and press mark seam as well. So right now what I've said was, with whatever things I've indicated in red lines is a basic command I've given to the PC to Blender that I have to open up this 3D mesh in such a way that it will open up from these edges. So with this four legs selected, I'll again hit unwrap and we can see that the legs have opened up. So now comes the next step is representing the whole material on it. So now let's go back to our material editor. And as right now we can see that the table looks a lot more cleaner. We can see initially we had pretty big shading lines and all. So now let me show you what's actually happening in this 3D and 2D process. Let's go back into my UV editing viewport. Let me show up the material which I have used, which is this wood material, and let me switch on the rendering mode. As you can see, with this being a table, and this is the initial phase. What's happening right now is like with whatever UV cell, like this is called a UV cell which I've created in the 2D in the UV view space. So this whole part I have divided it into a single part and I have placed it here. And right now whatever information it has on the backside would be represented here. So suppose if I'll move this thing in my UV view space, we can also see that the way this wooden pattern is moving also changes. So if right now I'm moving it up, so technically if for an example, let's take this small face here, which is this guy right here. So whatever thing this face is being represented on, like whatever pattern is there below this thing, the moment I move this, the same pattern will also be projected in a 3D view space as well. So this is a process of how we plan to view our 3D assets with a material being projected on them. So right now, this whole asset is not without any errors on it. As we can see that whatever wooden pattern we have, which is flowing from here and is going to the bottom, we can see that all of our wooden veins, which right now are going on the x-axis, from the bottom side, when we'll see the same veins are going on the y-axis, which is kind of a unrealistic scenario. But reason for this thing to happen is because right now in our upper face, we can see that in a material projection, all of the veins are going like this in the x-axis. But when I'm selecting a lower face, we can see that all of the veins are still going straight, but this face is rotated in 90 degrees. That's the reason which is causing that issue. So the same way I can rotate my 3D assets in my 3D viewport, I can also move or rotate them in my UV space as well. Like, and it's the same tool. Like here, move tool is used to move our UV cell, and rotate tool is used to rotate our UV cell. So right now, once I rotate this UV cell here, I'm rotating this UV cell here to be somewhat closer to 90 degrees. So right now we can see whatever wooden fiber patterns which we had, which were previously going on our x-axis from top, is also following the same wood fiber patterns on the bottom side, where all of these fibers are moving towards the x-axis only. So this is one way in which we use to fix all of our texture errors, but still sometimes it may still cause some minor errors. Like when we'll see on this edge, we can still see that this pattern, it's not properly repeating. We can see that there's something wrong happening here, because whatever pattern is starting on the top is not being properly continued on the bottom part. So as a 3D artist, our main job is whenever we split a 3D assets to add a material on them, we have to hide these edges as much as possible, because whenever we represent something 3D and 2D, we can't basically skip We can't just project everything straight away and have a good result. There'll always be these seam lines which we have to hide. So another way to represent this is like every time when we look at a table, we'll always look towards a table from the top or basically a front view. But it's pretty rare occasions where we'll actually go bottom and check how it is happening. So this is just one of the ways on which we can hide our UVs. So I've sort of followed the same procedure for its legs. When initially I said I'll be selecting all of the inside edges, what I did here was I basically just added these edges on the inside so that all of my uneven splitting of the UVs would only happen here. Right now, if we can see, whatever wooden pattern I have here is being continued on the next face as well. We don't have any weird looking seam, and it looks like as if it's actually carved out of a natural wood. But whatever, so the UVing has a very important task of hiding up our seams so that we have the best outcome available. Now let's follow the same procedure for our chair as well. So right now I've added the wooden material to a table. Now let's do this for the chair as well. So I'll select up my chair. I'll go into material tab, and here, rather than creating up a new material, I'll just assign the already created wood material which I've assigned to the table to the chair as well. And the moment I've assigned, we can now see again that we have a lot of those errors where we have here we have the wood which is looking good, but here everything is being stretched. The same reason is because its UVs are not proper. So now let's fix the UVs for the chair. To fix it, let's go back to into edit mode, select everything, and start opening it up. So to open up the chair, let's select up the edges from where we want to split our chair, like from the bottom side, the inner faces, and hit mark seam. So right now we have created up a new UV island here. Like the same way, we'll also create UV islands for all of the other parts of the chair as well. That includes the side part, like from here. Let's cut it open from here as well and mark it as a seam line. So now let's take this part as an example. Here I'll also open it up from this part to create some difference. I'll select everything by pressing L, and next process is I'll hit unwrap again to bring it in my UV view space. Right now we can see that we have a lot of stretching going on. The reason for this thing is because this thing is not opened up properly. What I meant by open up properly is like right now I have a, a basic half cube which has to be opened up as a cube, but thing is a cube cannot be opened up when everything is connected together. So I have to cut it out more. So to do that, I'll select these edges and I'll mark seam again, and then select everything and hit unwrap. Right now we can see like the moment I've cut my cube from this part, everything opened up properly, and we can see that we have a chair material here, but still we have a couple of seam problems. So let's fix those as well. Okay, yeah, let's no wait, let's leave this part for the end part. Right now let me show up how to do the legs, and in the end I'll show how to fix everything. I'll follow the same procedure I did for the legs of the table as well. Let me select up all of these edges from the inner part where they'll be most likely to be visible. Let's follow the same step for the bottom part as well. Mark seam, select these faces. Okay, so I have to cut it open from here as well. Hit mark seam, select everything, and hit unwrap again. Now it's opened up in a 3D viewport, and we can see. Okay. Okay. Now we have all of our legs unwrapped, and we can see that the proper material has been applied. Now let's come back to this face here. And so what, as we can see here, we have some weird lines being formed here, which kind of looks unrealistic as well. So now let's fix this one area. So I have these four edges selected, and I'll hit unwrap to make them cleaner. And then here on the UV viewport, I'll again rotate them in 90 degrees. That is by selecting rotate tool, and I'll rotate them in 90. Now we can see that whatever patterns we had on the side is also the same kind of patterns we have on this side, and it's kind of creating a proper flow of the wooden fiber details which we have here to make it look a bit more realistic. And now the only remaining part is our shoulder rest part, which needs to be fixed. So let's again divide this whole part into different faces as well. Select these lower parts, mark seam. Okay. Select the top faces as well and mark seam. Now select these faces, like all of the remaining faces from the shoulder rest part, and hit unwrap. And now they're also opened up, but at the same time we have the same issues where like the wooden fibers here, they're going on the Z axis, but here they're going on the X axis. Let's make everything parallel to the Z axis. So right now we can see that the fibers on this side are fine, but the fibers on this side, they're not good. So that means we have to rotate the UV cell of this part. So simply select the UVs here, select the rotate tool and rotate them in 90 degrees. It's fine if you rotate them on the negative 90 degrees or the positive 90 degree axis, because it will still show the same wooden pattern being followed. Let's do the same procedure for the other side as well. Rotate it in 90 degrees. And here we have. And also for the back part here, all of our wooden patterns are going on the Y axis. Let's bring them back into the Z axis. With everything selected, we just need to rotate this thing in by 90 degrees. And let's move it somewhere here to have some better like right now we can see we have all of like a wooden flow set, but we can still see this some sort of difference being happening on this side and on this side as well. This is happening because right now the faces which I have here is not being continued by the faces I have here. To make this thing look more realistic, I would say whatever wooden patterns which are flowing from the top should sort of end here. To do this, let's remove the seam line which we initially had here. To remove a seam line, we just need to select those seams, press Ctrl E to bring our edge menu, and previously we were doing mark seam. Right now we'll just do clear seam. By hitting clear seam, we have removed the seam, we can select all of this thing and hit unwrap. And now we can see all of our faces being projected on a straight line, and we can see that whatever pattern we had on top is kind of being flowed on the bottom side as well. This just makes our model look a bit more cleaner. And this is one way how we add materials. Apart from this, we can also add multiple materials to an asset wherever we want. But right now, because this is a wooden furniture, I've only used wood. But if it was a case where the top part is made out of wood and the bottom part, like let's take this table as an example, and the bottom part, it's not wood, it's something else, then that way we'll just select all of the faces which require a different material. We'll select all of them manually one by one. And like here we have a plus icon. We'll just hit on this plus icon which indicates add a material, and let's create a new like whatever material we have added, we have to create a new one. Let's just name it as legs and hit assign. So right now what happened was, initially whatever wood material I had for the table is being removed from these faces, and the new leg material has been assigned. So here on this leg material, I can have anything like for the default material, I can have anything I want. Either I can import a material like I did previously for the wood, or here another option I have is, once we have a default material with nothing imported, we'll have an option here which says base color. We can just press on this base color and assign whatever color we want. Suppose I want it to be a bit more darker, I'll just move my indicator from whiter side to the darker side to make it look more darker. And apart from that, we have other properties as well, which indicates how metallic this material is supposed to be, how specular, roughness and all it's supposed to be. But right now, let's not go into all of this stuff and just see that how we are assigning different materials to different assets. So previously when I was assigning wood, forgot to select this part. So if we find something which has been an error, we just need to select them again, select those faces again, and just select the material which we wanted to assign to them previously. Like for the bottom part, it was leg. So I'll just press leg and I'll just hit assign again. So right now we can see that all of the wooden patterns has been removed from the bottom side, and only the new leg material which I've created is being assigned. So this is how, so right now what I've gone through is like I've shown you guys how to create up a basic chair and a table, like how it's modeled up. And then I've showed how to add up a new material on it. And once I have a material added up, how to represent this table in its UVs properly to fix most of the projection errors which we have by default. And also if we want to add a new material, then how do we do that? So with this, I would end my 3D modeling presentation. Are there any doubts which you people want to ask? Anything specific? Or like if there's something which is being confused, then do ask me right now, because the next couple of minutes is going to be question and answers. I'll gladly and happily help you guys out with any doubts you have. Okay. Hello? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, yes. We can hear you, Venkat.
Okay, okay, yeah. So is there anything anyone wants to ask?
Anyone?
Or like, do you have like some doubts on the modeling part? Because that was pretty small. Mostly I was just explaining about how to add materials and UVs, but the modeling session was smaller. Like, so do you guys have any doubts on how some certain steps I followed, and do I repeat any of them too, so it or make it more clearer? If anyone has any sort of doubts, you can just ask me again. I'll gladly redo it.
There was a query in the chat box, I think.
Okay. Okay.
So Venkat, actually, what he was asking was they would like to know approximately how long it would take for a beginner, to learn all the basics of modeling, the rudiments of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So right now, mainly what I did was I have just basically given an introduction on how the workflow in 3D modeling goes. But in terms of learning how long it takes, it kind of depends from person to person. To make something like a chair and table for a beginner who is doing it first time, can always watch a tutorial online. We can like there are a lot of available tutorials in YouTube for free where a person can watch and do this. To make something like this chair and table, I would say any fresher can just watch a tutorial which would be at max 10-15 minutes long, or in a rare occasion half an hour long. He can follow all of the step-by-step procedures there. But to learn something of this level, I would say anyone can get it done within a day or two. But the main thing I would say is like getting used to the UI. So whenever I sort of rotate my viewport in my 3D space, right, I'm kind of used to, I have the muscle memory that I have to press my middle mouse button and move whenever I need to move a certain asset. I have the muscle memory to automatically change all of these tools pretty faster for me, because I've been working for a very long time. But for a person who starts initially, would obviously require some time to get used to on, like, selecting what tool they want initially. So I would say for a complete beginner, rather than learning how to model out everything, first thing is like getting used to the UI. And getting used to a UI, by getting used to UI, I mean like just adding up an asset like a cube and just moving it in 3D space, getting used to how to rotate in XYZ axis properly, how to scale our assets properly. And once we got used to it, we can just like add objects to just create blockers. So right now I've just added up a cube here, suppose in the scene, and I'll just scale it up again a bit more in X and Y axis. I'll make it smaller in the Z axis, and let's add another cube here. Now, rather than creating the legs from this cube, what I would do is like I would just move, I'll just keep on adding a new cube and just move them here, like make it smaller, like the legs were supposed to be, like as small as the legs were supposed to be. Move them in their X, Z and Y axis to indicate to making this stable. And this time, rather than moving up the whole cube, I would just go into edit mode, select this one face and bring it down. I can sort of follow this procedure by just adding up new cubes every time. I can just keep on adding up assets. Now I added up another cube. I'll scale it down like with the scale tool, and then again move them into this location. Again get into edit mode, bring it down. If right now I feel like, okay, this one cube is bigger and like the other one is smaller, and I want this thing to be duplicated here, I can just delete this cube. Like to delete anything, we just need to select an asset, press X, and we'll have the delete menu. Just hit delete. I can select this guy, press Shift D to duplicate, and right now I can move my duplicate here if I want. So this is just another way where now I'll just select these two cubes again, press Shift D and move these two legs to the other side. And right now I have another chair made with a different workflow. So basically in this workflow, if we get once we get used to the UI, right, and how to properly move cubes and place them properly, I would say any person can figure out the basic fundamentals of modeling, where just using these small shapes like cubes, rectangles, cylinders and all, creating up a base model. And then later on, if we need to make some specific higher detail stuff, then we can just go into edit mode and start editing them. But yeah, the main thing I would say is like for the person, a fresher, is to get used to the UI. And once you're used to the UI, then that is when like the next thing is like getting you, once we have an object selected, and would be getting used to all of these edit tools. So to reach a level where we can freely model out any simple assets like chair, tables, beds, like walls and stuff for an interiors, and I can say a person can easily learn all of this stuff within 3-4 days or a week. Okay, anything else? Okay, I can see some new comments on the chat box.
So there is actually another additional question asked by the same person. They would like to know if Blender is just solely for only modeling, or can we also have other features?
Okay, this is a question which has a pretty long answer, but I'll keep it as short as possible. So in Blender, we can model whatever we want. And like I showed, we can apply materials to them. Apart from that, we can animate, which is a separate window here. And this is something where Pradina would be introducing with the basics of animation. Apart from animation, we can also render stuff. What I mean by rendering is, like suppose right now, when initially I was working, everything was gray in color. So that meant there was no material added to it. Okay, I'll just remove the small example I have created here. I'll just select everything and delete them. So once I have, now I want to, even though I have added up a wooden material here, which kind of looks like wood, but it's not super realistic like the way when we look at natural wood, because right now we don't have the proper light bouncing happening, because whenever we have anything in front of us and light falls on it, light will always fall on it, it will bounce and it will create some interesting shades and visuals. These are some of the other topics which Pradyumna will go on with his presentation. so I won't be explaining them, but I'm just saying is like, to make this thing look more realistic, we have a thing called rendering, and that would make it look more realistic. And apart from that, we can also sculpt in Blender, which is just digital sculpting rather than working with a mouse and keyboard. Here for sculpting we use a pen tablet. Many of you might have seen people where they'll have a small board in front of them and they'll be drawing something on it, and that detail is sort of shown on the PC, whatever they're drawing. It's the same tool used for sculpting. Right now I don't have it to show you guys an example, but we can also sculpt in Blender. We can also animate, we can also create VFX. Basically, if we have the time and budget, we can create a whole movie in this software, and it is completely free to use. Anything else you guys want to ask about Blender, or like any other doubts with what I've done?
Venkat, I believe we still have around half an hour more, half an hour or 40 minutes more. So could you also introduce them about like, you know, give them a basic layout of how sculpting works? So even though you don't have the tablet with you, you can just show how it works and what are the various components we can use, like, you know, to sculpt an object. So yeah,
cool. Okay, so right now I'll just remove these two things from my scene so that I can just clear it off. Let's hide them, and I'll add in a new object. This time, rather than taking a cube, let's take a sphere. So sphere is usually called as a UV sphere in Blender. Right now with the sphere selected, I have a UV sphere in my scene. This is just a spherical shape with lot more divisions on it. Like we can see it's just a collection of smaller faces connected with each other with a certain tilt to form of a sphere. So to start sculpting, I would just click on sculpting menu. And here, once I am in my sculpting menu, we can see that right now I don't have any of the move rotate tools. What I have is a circular gizmo on my viewport, and which is kind of moving based on how I'm moving my mouse. So with the first draw, so by default we'll have the draw option selected, and with the draw selected, wherever I'll click, like left click on my mouse and move it, we can see that all of the faces are being extruded outside. Wherever I'm clicking right now, I'm not moving them based on my own inputs. I'm just moving them based on how I'm clicking them. So once I click on anything, that certain part would be excluded. So by following this process, we can extrude. So this is how it works. So basically, if I have a pen tablet, then whatever input I'm giving with my pen, like the freehand motion from my hands, would sort of be converted into the input right now, which I'm giving through my mouse. And we can sort of form all of these different shapes and all. So we have different kind of brushes as well here, so which would just sort of move this thing. We can also move like the same way I have scaled things in 3D, I can also do that in sculpting as well by using different tools. So right now, if I'll press G, which is the grab brush, and the color of my brush changes into yellow. So here we can see we have three, like many different brushes, but they're sort of indicated with three different colors. This one is indicated in blue markings, this is indicated in red markings, and this is indicated in yellow markings. So basically what this one does is like, this is used to, all of the brushes with blue color is used to deform a certain shape. All of the brushes used in red color are used to set a certain shape, like it can either be smooth, it can either be flat, but it just sets with a certain type of information. And all of the brushes which are in the yellow color are used to morph a certain shape. So morphing means that we are not creating anything new, we are just moving stuff in a different way. So right now I have, with the draw brush selected, I've added all of these, like I've extruded all of these paths out. But with the move brush selected, which is on the bottom side, this one, like I can just select the certain edge and I can move it with my mouse. So now I just clicked here with my mouse and I'm moving my mouse and it will just sort of move that certain part. So this is just like the basic of how sculpting works. And ideally, I would say sculpting is a process which takes a lot of time. So we have seen a lot of characters, creatures, and all in the movies, right? Those are basically not poly modeled. Those are just sculpted out in real in 3D. But sculpting is a process which has a pretty heavy learning curve. Many people, they spend years on learning how to sculpt properly, but they still won't be able to reach a very high level of work. Ideally, I would say, like I said, modeling is something to make something of low level, which might take two, three, uh, 2, 3 days to learn, but sculpting something which might take up weeks or couple of months to learn properly. But yeah, I would say sculpting is a pretty advanced topic to work. And so, okay, right now, if I have a bit more time, let's explain modifiers as well. So, okay, let's start again, and I'll be explaining a new part of Blender right now. Let's add up a cube, and here we can see we have another symbol which kind of represents a wrench. When we click on it, we can see we have a modifiers tab, and here we'll press add modifier, and here we can see like we have different sets of options here, which again can be divided into their own parts. Like we have modify, here we have different sets of options. We have generate, which would generate different sets of outputs. We have deform, which is used to deform a certain shape, and here we have physics, which are sort of used to do all of the simulations, different kind of simulations as well. So the first step is I'll be showing you some pretty simple modifiers as well. Like suppose I have this cube, but I want this cube to be smooth. Like I want it to have a lot of subdivision on, like I want it to be subdivided and look a lot more smoother, because right now we can see this cube has pretty hard edges. So what I would do is I would just go to add modifier, and here we can see I have a modifier called a subdivision surface. So once I'll click on it, this modifier will automatically be added. So what this modifier is doing is it's just subdividing our asset into more faces. So technically, to show what's happening with while adding this modifier is like, suppose if I'm adding up loop here, I'm adding up a loop here, and I'm adding up loop here. So basically what I did was I had a default cube, and I have divided it from the x-axis. Like I have added a loop from the x-axis, I've added a loop from the y-axis, and I've added another loop from the z-axis. But right now, even though once I'm out of edit mode, there's no change visually. Like what's happening, it still looks like the same cube. Even though in edit mode I have all of these extra loops in between, in my object mode it still looks the same. So what right now I'm doing is I have to make it smooth. To make this thing appear a bit more smooth, I'll just select these edges and I'll try to bring them in. So I'll move them a bit on the z-axis and move them a bit on the x-axis. I'll do this thing for the bottom faces as well, move them a bit on the x-axis and move them a bit on the z-axis. I'll do the same thing for all the 4 sides. So right now we can see whatever cube I had initially is now it kind of has a more of a cylindrical shape. I can also do the same thing for these edges as well, like from the other side. Like I just need to select all of these edges. I can move them in my y-axis. I can scale them a bit down to make it smaller. I'll follow the same steps from the other side. I'll select all of these edges, move them again inwards in the y-axis and scale them down. Now, right now, this thing is going more towards a spherical shape rather than a cubical shape. So, but this thing took me a certain amount of time to do it. I can get the same sort of result in a very faster way when I'm using a modifier. So suppose right now I'm adding up a modifier and I'm using subsurface. I'm having the same result in a couple of seconds, but which is a bit more accurate, because previously I was doing all of this stuff using freehand. It took me a lot of time and it was not accurate. But because right now I've used a tool, everything has been like smoothed out evenly. And another best part is here I have an option called as level of view. So here I have the number 1 selected. So that means right now it's only being subdivided one time. If I'll make this thing into 2, I'll click here and just hit 2 on my keyboard and press enter. Now this thing is being subdivided 2 times. So what that means is initially I had a cube. Okay, wait, sorry about that. Initially I had a cube. Now it's being subdivided into more number of faces. Initially, suppose if like I had a cube and I have only added like a loop from between. Like, okay, I'll just add up a new cube and I'll show you what different thing happened. I'll just move it aside. Initially, we have only added a loop in X, Y, and Z axis. Right now, what happened? Right now, when this thing went to level 2, what meant by that was now more number of loops have been added to it. Like initially it was only one. Right now there are like 3 loops being added from all of the directions. So technically we can see now we have a cube with a lot more number of divisions on it. And once this whole thing is being smoothed out, it'll become more curvier and which kind of forms into a sphere. So if we have the subdivision surface modifier added on it and we'll just keep on increasing, suppose let's take it 4. Right now I've added so many divisions to it that it'll just end up appearing like a very smooth sphere. And that is because it has a lot of polygons added to it. We can see that right now all of the number of faces is very small. We can see that a lot more number of faces has been added. So this is one kind of modifier which is used to render out an end result, I would say. Apart from that, there are many other modifiers as well. Now let's say I have a cube which has a certain height. Let's call this thing a pillar. Move this thing up and I want to duplicate it like 10 times on the y-axis. So every time if I'll press shift D and I'll move it on the y-axis and I need 10 copies of it, then again I'll hit shift D and again move it on the y-axis. Right now what will happen is like every time I'm moving it, I can't guarantee you the distance between this cube and this cube, and the distance between this cube and this cube would be the same, because right now I'm doing everything manually. There's a very high chance of having a human error. But if I want to add inputs based on a PC where I want to, suppose right now I'm creating a duplicate, I'm creating up a duplicate and I'm moving it, and I want whatever duplicate I have to have all the duplicates which are coming next to have the same number of distance. So for that, what I'll do is like I'll go into the modifiers tab, and here we have a generator called as array, which is kind of in the same group as the subsurface. I'll press array, and from here we can see we have a thing called as count. So previously we had one thing, and right now with the count this is being doubled, but it sort of looks like it's just being scaled on the x-axis. That is because right now we have 2 cylinders, but they're just kind of overlapping each other. The moment I'll increase this factor x value, so the factor x indicates the distance between 2 cubes. When it was previously it was 1, so technically the distance between the first cube and the second cube is 1, because the unit of each cube is also 1 in meters from every, also 1. So it kind of felt like overlapping. So the moment I change the distance between 2, right now we can see that like the distance between both of them is 2 units. And if I'm increasing my count here, for the every number of count I'm increasing, a new cube is being added with the same distance to it. And suppose right now I have all of these cubes added in the x-axis. Now I want them in the y-axis. So I'll add another array to it, and this time rather than having it on the x, I'll keep x0 and I'll keep it on the y-axis. Let's keep y-axis in 2. And so right now I'll keep on increasing its count. And as we can see, the same number of cubes is being duplicated on the y-axis as well. But we still have the same cube, which is right now being duplicated 7 times on the x-axis and 6 times on the y-axis. So the plus point of this thing is whatever edit I'll do to my original cube, like bringing it down, would also be copied by all of the other cubes as well. Suppose if I'm adding some shape to it, like let's say I'm extruding this part in and I'm bringing this thing up, and then I'm again extruding it out, then again extruding it out, I'm scaling it up and bring it up. Right now I have this shape of a pillar done, and all of the pillars are being duplicated with whatever inputs of array I have given to them. So let's just remove these modifiers right now. And apart from that, there are some more modifiers. Let's take the next one is bevel. What bevel does is like, initially I have showed you a tool called as bevel here. So what this tool does is like, with whatever edges I have selected, and when I'll hit bevel on it, it'll just smooth them out. Now this time what I want is, I don't want to select each and every edge manually, but at the same time I want this bevel to happen on all of the edges. So rather than doing everything manually, I can just go to the modifiers and add a bevel here. And as you can see, it's already being subdivided. Okay, give me a second. Okay, yeah, let's add bevel. Sorry about that. As we can see, like we can see the bevel happening everywhere. And the best part about this tool is like, if here I'm increasing the segment, this segment indicates that my bevel, whatever is happening, would be a lot more smoother. Like the more number of segments I have, more smoother it would be. So previously it was just a cube which looked something like this, which has all of the sharp edges, but right now I wanted it to be smooth. So with the help of this modifier, I made sure that I have the same shape everywhere, and at the same time it's looking smooth also. Like I don't have any specific areas which is kind of sharp and all. To just smooth it out, this is another tool which is used. And to show up some other tools as well. Now I have this cube. Let's go on with another tool. And another very highly used tool while modeling, I would say, is mirror. So what mirror does is like, if right now I have this cube selected and I want to have a mirror of it. So suppose in edit mode, I'm moving this thing in y-axis and I want to have a mirror of this cube, and I have its origin still in the center, and I want to have a mirror of this cube on the other side as well. So I'll just switch this thing into y-axis and we can see that I have a duplicate of this cube on the other side. And whatever changes I'm doing to this cube, suppose if I'm scaling this face down with the scale tool, it'll also happen in the other, okay, sorry. Yeah, if I'm scaling this thing on the Z axis, it will also happen on the other tool. If I'm extruding this thing out from here, it will also happen on the other tool. I can extrude this thing from here. I can extrude it from here as well. Move it up. Like whatever shapes I'm trying to create on this side will also be duplicated on the other side. And suppose if I'm creating a shape from this side and I'm crossing my origin, which is the center point, then whatever mirror I have created would also happen on the other side. So suppose right now I've crossed the origin, I have this shape and I want to move it. So we can see the moment I'm moving this face, we can see that this is my original face where, so this is my original shape where this whole set of faces are crossing the center point, the origin, which is indicated by this point. And the moment this modifier is on, we can see that the same thing is being mirrored as well, and it's coming out from the opposite side. So mirror is something we have to make sure every time we are working that we should never cross the origin point, because once we cross the origin point, we can see this sort of conflicts happening everywhere, and it is not ideal while we work. So it's better, like if we have this sort of edits to be done, we just bring it as close as to the origin, but not mix it up, so that in the end we can say that we have this sort of shape rather than something which is overlapping or like it has some big gap between it. Okay, so let's remove this modifier on it as well. Okay, now let's add up another fresh cube and show another different type of modifiers. So right now I've gone with array, bevel, mirror, and subsurface. So right now let me show you another modifier called as multi-resolution. Okay, so multi-resolution is same as subsurface, like the subdivision modifier, but in a different way. So here when I'll hit subdivide, I'll still have the same sort of output as what's happening in the subsurface. But here what I can do is like, right now I have pressed subsurface 3 times. So that is why this indicates level 3. So every time I'll bring this back into level 1. Level 1 indicates the original cube which I have, and like level 3 indicates the most subdivided version I have. And what this tool helps in, like suppose I want to make some edit on the lower on this cube, I'll move this thing down, and now I want to subdivide it to its original face. Right now we can see that there's a slight tilt on our subdivision on our cube while I'm increasing its level. This is because I have done the edit on my original face. And the plus point is like, while I'm on my edit mode, I can see the actual shape which I had, which was just a cube with this edge moved on its z-axis, but on my viewport I'll have a subdivided face. So suppose with this face selected, I'll hit insert, I'll hit an insert, sorry, I'll hit an insert here, which is this tool, and then I'll hit another extrude, which is this, and I'll make this shape. The moment I'll come out of edit mode, we can see that we have this weird, different looking shape. And that is because right now my object, which was initially of this shape, is being subdivided. Like this is the first level output. Now I'm adding in more loops to make it more smoother. That will indicate the second level of subdivision where it's a lot more smoother. And once I'll take it into the next level, which is level 3, here it'll add lot more loops to it and make it appear more smoother. So this is a workflow where we can create things which look very smooth with a very low poly workflow. This is also something which is kind of used in like higher level of modeling, but not straight away. So this is something I would recommend people to use once they got used to modeling different things in Blender, rather than straight away just trying out the higher level stuff. But yeah, right now I'm just wanted to show that Blender is a software capable of doing all of these things, so I'm showing it to everyone. Okay, so are there any doubts with the modifiers which I've shown right now? Any specific things anyone wants to ask? If not, I'll go with the next one. Like if you have any doubts, you can type it on the chat. Okay, anyone? No. Okay. Hmm. Okay, so right now let's okay, then I'll continue on with my presentation. Then I'll just add up another cube. Like okay, right now rather than creating a cube, let's take a different shapes. Like I said, we have many different shapes here, right? So this time I'll take a cylinder. So when we add a cylinder, we will have a certain set of properties to cylinder, like number of divisions it's going to have. Right now it says we have it has 32 vertices. So what this means is like this whole cylinder has 32 loops on the z-axis. Suppose if I'll bring this number down to 8, we can see that right now this cylinder is pretty flat. It only has 8 sets, like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. If so, depending on what shape we are modeling, suppose we want to model a pole which is very smooth, we can take a number which is higher, like 32 or 60, to make it more smoother and all. But usually it is recommended to always work with smaller numbers and then go into higher number, because once we have a high subdivision, it gets pretty tough to model out. Okay, so here let's just create a normal pole then. Right now let's bring this part to make it big. And right now this is just a normal pole, and we want to add some sort of tubelet on top of it, or like let's just call it a current pole. And so what next we need to do is, okay, we have some comments on the chat. Sorry, the number is inside, but we recommend going. Okay, sorry. Okay, so now let's add up another cube. Now here we have a cube on bottom, but it's pretty smaller than the cube. So let's scale it up by a scale tool. Let's bring this thing here up and create a duplicate of this cube and just bring it down. And let's create another duplicate and bring it down. So let's just say this is a normal pole with these are like lines to hold up our wires. Now we can select all of this thing, press Ctrl J to merge them to create them into a single asset, and now we can use our array modifier on the y-axis rather than having it on the z-axis. On the y-axis, let's keep this thing 3, now like 10. Let's have a certain number of distance. To increase our distance manually, we can just click on our factor y and just move it with a mouse. Like now I'm pressing it and moving towards the right side, and you can see the asset moving on the right side. Now I have moved it with on almost 25 units, or I can manually hit the number as well, create up more duplicates to create some count. And right now we can see like we sort of have 4 poles in between. And right now the next thing is like, suppose we want to add wires to it. What we can do is like we can add up another cylinder, because wires are just basically cylinders which are just stretched in a longer way. So we will just add a cylinder which will come on bottom, because that is where the origin is. We'll bring it up move it in the x-axis, rotate it on the x-axis in almost 90 degrees. Let's say let's call this 90. Scale it down a bit because wires are meant to be very slim. Let's move them a bit. Keep this thing here and let's go into edit mode and make this thing longer, which would be somewhere till here. And see, even though I've connected these two poles, we all know that wires would never be straight in line. They'll always have a curve to them because of gravity. So to bring the feel of gravity, what we can do is like we'll go into edit mode. I can add up a loop here and bring it down. So right now, even though this thing is down, but it's not as smooth as what it was supposed to be. So here, what I can do is like, first of all is like what we have this like this cylinder with a subdivision on it, but we can see one thing is that the faces which are here won't be visible because it's inside our mesh. So we can just delete them. I can just delete them. Okay, sorry, delete faces. And right now I showed you a tool called subsurface, right? The moment I'll hit subsurface, it'll automatically start to divide itself. And once I'll hit to edit mode, I'll still have my original loop in between to have the controls. I can move this thing down a bit more and we can see the lower I take it, the way I move this one edge kind of depends on how this whole curve is forming up. So this is basically how we use subsurface tool to make things out more smoother. So once we have this wire done, what I can do is like I can just create duplicates of this wire and bring it down. I can create another duplicate, bring it down. And let's just merge all of these three things together with Control J. And then right now I can use another array modifier on it in the y-axis with the value of 25 because it was the same I was using for, okay, its count should be around, just a second. Okay, yeah, sorry, my bad. I need to apply this modifier first. Right now, then again, I'll add a array modifier in y-axis. Rotation, sorry. And I can move it by 25 units, which I did. Okay, yeah. So right now I have this thing duplicated here. Now I just need to increase its count. And you can see that basically what I did was I just created one pole here and one set of wires here. But with the help of array and subsurface, but with the help of array, I've created up like 4 duplicates of it. And here to make this wires, I have just made one original cylinder with one subdivision with one loop in between, which I took it down in z-axis and I have subdivided it to create the smoothness, and then I've used the same array tool to duplicate it everywhere. So right now I can add up another array on this thing to duplicate it on the other side, which would be its x-axis. So I just need to move it from its x-axis, and right now I have this set of poles which have wires going on it, and it kinds of like in the moment, and as let's select this tool, and the moment I'll just keep on increasing the count, and here like more number of poles would be added, and even in this array, if I'll just keep on increasing this thing's count as well, we can see more number of wires are also being added. But I just wanted to keep it smaller, not a longer example, so let's just keep it within a count of 4. Okay, so we have some comments on the chat. Okay. Okay, this is just a recommendation site. Okay, so and are there any specific doubts with the workflow which I've showed right now of these poles and wires, like a part which where someone felt like they didn't understand anything, or like how the whole subsurface worked for these wires, because this might be a bit complicated for some users. So is it fine with everyone? Did they understand, or do I like go through this part again? But to just say this thing in basic, what I did was basically I just I just used like basic modeling tools to make my work easier rather than creating different duplicates of each pole and creating all of these duplicates of each wire manually. I just used a couple of tools available in Blender to just make my work easier and at the same time give some certain inputs like we have in DLF. Like every time we have current wires there, it's not like all of them would be in random distance. There's always a certain number of distance between them when they're placed. So I'm just kind of giving in the same real world inputs into Blender to make my work easier. Anything, any specific doubts? Like, or like you can also type it on the chat window. Okay. Nothing from anyone. Or even apart from this, if there's some other part which I've showed previously, which no one understood, then I'll also go, I can recast that part to make it more easier to understand. Or if some, or like anything with my presentation. Uh, like we still have like like around 10-15 minutes for question and answers. If no, so not even doubts, if like there's some any other workflow which you guys want to ask, or like if you have some doubts like how stuff like these are made in 3D, I can sort of try to explain them in a very easy way possible. Like anything.
Venkat, maybe you can speak a little about the process of exporting models out of Blender. I'm not sure if you covered it or not,
Okay,
but
yeah,
yeah,
okay, then I'll do that.
yeah.
So Blender is not the only 3D software like which we use in the industry. There are many different softwares like Max, Maya, which are used for modeling. And apart from that, whatever we model are also exported into game engines like Unreal Engine, Unity, where they are rendered in for a game like which can be a mobile game or a PC game or a console game, or it can also be an art quiz project. Like whatever it is, they all needs to be modeled out in some software and then they're imported into those softwares. So what we can do here, like suppose right now I have this pole which I have this whole set of poles and wires which I want to export. So basically first thing before we export anything is like we have to make sure that none of the modifiers are still active. So right now I have this modifier, this array modifier applied on this pole, which sort of gives me the control of increasing its count or decreasing its count. Let's say my requirement was to only make 4 poles and I don't need any more. So once that thing is confirmed, I'll just go into this drop down arrow, click here and press apply. The moment I hit apply, I'll lose my modifier from a modify window. And at the same time, all of these number of poles cannot be changed as well. It's like this, I have finalized like the number of poles I wanted to duplicate. Right now I can't change them. Same thing can be done with the array modifier here. The moment I'll apply both of the array modifiers, like one modifier was to duplicate them on the y-axis and another array was to duplicate it on the x-axis to get on the other side. Right now, I also can't change these values because I've applied these modifiers. So that's why once I'm selecting, we can see that everything is being selected. So I can just select everything I have in the screen. Like the way to select is like the same as all softwares. We just do a left click and drag our mouse and we can see a box coming up in front of us. So this box will just select everything which is within its range. And then here we have our option called as files. Once we'll press on files, we'll go down, we can see we have an option called as export here. Export. So while export, mainly the two most used formats of export are the WAV format, which is .obj, and the and the FBX format. So wave format is something which is a very old technology, but still people use it in some occasions. But nowadays, almost everyone we use the format called as FBX. The moment I'll click on FBX, it'll give me a file explorer. So this indicates like where I want to save. Suppose if I'll press on my desktop, right now this thing will just show my desktop directory and it will show me an option to save it. So here I have to give it a name. By default, it will have a name as untitled. So I'll just give it a name. I'll just call it like, let's just call it polls. Sorry, my caps lock was on. Let's just call it polls. Once I have its name decided and its directory decided, which would be on my desktop, there are certain things I need to do. First thing is like I have to switch on to selected only. So what selected only indicates like whatever I have selected on my scene would only be exported. Like suppose to make this thing a bit more clear, like right now, let's add in another cube. I'll scale it a bit bigger and I'll move it in the x-axis a bit. So right now I move this cube here, and right now I have a task that I have to export out this model from Blender. So when I'm selecting up things with my like left click and drag, I've selected all of the poles, but I haven't selected this cube. So when I'll go into export FBX, have my location into desktop set, let's call it poles. And here if I'll tap on selected only, this way it'll only export whatever I selected, and that is all of the poles and Ys. I haven't selected this cube, so it won't select this cube. And I would say basically this is the only option we need to take care of right now. And here we have another option which is called as apply transforms. So what this does is, if in case we haven't applied any of our transform values, then it'll just reset them back to 0 so that we won't have any scaling issues later on. And I'll just hit export. So right now in my desktop, I'll have a file called as polls, which looks something like this. If I'll double click on it, now this is just a default Windows 3D viewer. Like just give it a couple of minutes. So here we can see whatever polls I have made is right now there in my viewport. Like even to rotate my camera, it's same middle mouse click and rotate, and like yeah, everything is visible. So basically right now this format, which is an FBX format, is kind of a universal format, and this thing can be imported in any software like Max, Maya, Unreal Engine, Unity. Any 3D supported software will always have the format to import FBX. FBX is just a universal format which everyone uses. Okay, apart from that,
Venkat, there's a question. So
okay.
they were asking if we face any orientation issues once we import it into a software like Unity.
Okay.
And also the other question is they would like to know if we can import a rigged model into Unity.
So if we have a model which has a rig, and the rig is created in Blender with all of its weight paints on it, everything done, and while we are hitting export, we don't need to do any extra work. Also, let's assume this is a model with a rig on it and I'm hitting export, like with the whole FPS format. Here we can see like all of the different type of objects formats is on, and here when this arm nature is on, this arm nature means that if the asset has a rig, that rig will also be exported. If there is no rig, then it won't export anything, but if we have a rig, even that rig would be exported. And once we bring that rig into Unity, then from there we can animate. If we want to add any extra animations on our asset, then we can add it from there. If not, we have already animated everything in Blender, and then we're taking that animation in, even that thing will work in Unity. But yeah, as long as like by default all of these options would usually be on, and whatever we want to export, we just select all of them and we hit export. But I would say if we are not changing any of the values from here apart from this switching on selected, then we'll hit export. Like yeah, that is how. And in terms of scaling, right, so what scaling we're sort of following in Blender would also be the same scaling in Unity. So right now while working let's switch on this transform. We can see that in Z axis, this indicates 30 meters in height. So ideally, obviously, whenever we make a pole, it won't be 30 meters in height. It will be a lot more smaller, but I didn't kept the scale while working in 3D. Sometimes you don't like, I didn't kept the scale in mind and I was just working in freehand. But ideal workflow would be like, if you have a pole and it's given that its height would be around 6 meters, then initially when I created the pole, right, I would just keep this thing into 6 meters. Okay, wait, sorry, it's scale, right? I'll in the dimensions part, sorry, not the location, in the dimensions part, I'll make sure in Z it's like 6 meters in height, then it will be this smaller, because yeah, right now it's around 39 meters, 39.5 meters. But if once we have an actual input done, I'll just give that input. And once I'll hit export, so right now this thing says it's 39 meters in height. So if I'll bring it into any different 3D software, it will be 39 meters in height in that software as well. Unless we can always change the scaling in any software we have. Like suppose here I had the option to change scale, right? The basic move, scale, rotate would kind of be available in any game engine softwares, or any other 3D modeling softwares will always have these three options there. If we want, we can manually scale all of our work there as well. But like, yeah, that is it. Any
Sir,
other
Sir, I
okay.
have one question. Here, everything we are designing in the static manner. That is already in the design manner. Is there any chance to design any object as a dynamic manner, like a values changing or movement, like that? Can we
Yeah,
able to
yes.
get
So
that is also.
okay.
And my second question is that now we are based on poles and cables we have maintained this here. Okay, here shall we are we can able to group it only these two one set. Two poles because I can able to copy and I can able to reuse for some other location or some other location within the project. Third thing, now you shown to us that we can select and we can select object and we can export in the BX manner for the 3D animation. Are we can able to import the same object for the future in other projects?
Yes. So, okay, let me open up a new scene. So right now I made an FBX of this file.
Yes.
So, and I'm not saving my, I'm not saving anything. I'll just create a new file. And so right now this new file has nothing, just our default cube, but I've already exported my FBX in my desktop, right?
Yes.
So I'll go into my file and like we have our export option. Above export we have import.
Yes.
So because our previous model we have exported in FBX, so here in import we'll import an FBX file. So here again I need to go back to my desktop and file the same file. And I remember I named my file as poles. I'll just select the pole and here I'll hit import FBX. And here I have my file back again. So technically whatever I've imported right now, that FBX file, not only in Blender, that FBX can be imported in Max, Maya, Unity, Unreal Engine, Godot. There are like many different softwares where we can export. See, if here whenever I'll hit save, normally I'll be saving this thing as a .blend file. Okay. So this blend file ultimately will only be saved as a Blender file, which will only work with Blender. But it won't work with any other software. Only Blender can open a blend file. But the FBX format which I've shown right now is a universal format, which is sort of being supported by each and every 3D softwares. If there's any new 3D software coming out, or there's a software which has been made many years ago, they'll always have an option. Either they'll support FBX or the other one which I showed, right, OBJ, in export settings, the older format. Almost each and every software will always have FBX and OBJ format.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
And the dynamic.
Yeah. So.
And right moving, now, like I want to, if I want to see that any moving object like that, okay, based on that, I will give the time as the reference. Okay, now every 10 seconds, now it is that, and now we are giving the standard, it is the pole by this one. Okay, if I want to give that any ball, I will make that any spiral over there. After 5 seconds, it will be move over from here to here like that. So is it possible to make it over here like this?
Yeah, so in Blender, we also have our animation tab where we can animate. Now, like the basic introduction of animation is something which Pradino will give on the next presentation. Okay, so right now I would not like to take up that part.
Okay.
But no to just, but to just give a basic input, like yes, whatever question you have asked can be done, but depending on like how complex sort of animation it is, it can either be done in a couple of minutes or second kind of animation if it's just one thing going from one place to another, versus like a human moving in like an actual CG movie or game,
Yeah.
which can take up a couple of days to make.
Yeah,
So
that's
this
enough,
is,
sir. Is it possible or not? Okay, you
yeah,
told
it's
me that.
possible.
Yeah, okay, sir. Sir, my third question. Now, based on this one, here we are created as a polls, and object wise we are saving as a one file like that. Okay, so instead of that one, as a now, let's suppose I am the electrical guy. So I want to make it that one standalone objects over here. I want to make it the library. I want to make it the library like a
Okay.
poles and switch gears, all these
Yeah.
one, whatever it components I can design over there, and based on that one I will each and every object I will save that as a WBF or
FBX format.
in like that. But instead of individual files, shall we make it any all these components, whatever it all these objects in the one library, and the
Yes.
same library can I import for that any new object, any new project, and is it from that library I can I able to import that any new project
Like yes, we can
from
do
any
that. Yeah, we can do that. So
Okay.
if you
After
want,
importing that one, can I able to drag and drop that object, right?
yeah. See,
Okay.
like the same way. See, right now this is the like poles and wires which I've created on my previous Blender file, and I've exported. So whatever I have in a viewport is not something which I've created in this Blender file. I've imported it from the FBX file I have. So basically, right now, if I want to make any changes to it, add anything extra, so so basically, if suppose I want to import something else, let's say I have already imported this pole, now I want to import something else. So I always have a test rig in my desktop folder. I'll just show you like how it goes. Like suppose right now I'm in a desktop, and like here we have this sci-fi mannequin. Suppose if I'm importing this thing, so yeah, it's pretty small in size, so let me just bring it. So this is basically a basic character with a small rig on it. So this is like all of these joints which we can see here, right? This weird triangular thing is, this is just basically a rig. I'll just for now I'll just hide it part. So right now I've just imported this character. This is not something which I've made in my current Blender scene, but I already have this thing made, so I just imported it. And once I have imported, I can move it the way I want. I can rotate it the way I want. If I want to scale it, I can also scale it the way I can scale it in y-axis, or I can scale it in any, I can just normally scale it as big as I want. I can make it him into 100 feet height human, or I can even make him into centimeters in height. It's all my choice, whatever I want to do. But like, yeah, as long as it's an FBX, then it'll be supported by any different software. It'll be supported by any software. And like I said, our basic move, scale, rotate commands, right? All of these three would be available in any software we use. So this thing would never be an issue that you have already made something in Blender, but once you're bringing it into a different software, right? Then there, if you want to change its place, you can always do that in the other software. You don't need to come back into Blender, make that edits in Blender, and then again re-export it. If you feel like you don't want this character here, you want to move it 2 units on the other side, then rather than doing this change into Blender and exporting it again, you can just straight away do this thing in the other software by these 3 commands. It's just to make your work more easier. And the plus point of Blender is like right now, everything what I've did was in poly modeling. Suppose even if it's something made in CAD, a software like CAD where we use NURBS and all, even those softwares will have an option to export as an FBX. So whatever things we have made in CAD can also be brought into Blender. But these, like the polygon format, might not be supported by CAD, but whatever is made in CAD can be brought into Blender. So if it's something like you have made in CAD and you want to use it in your 3D scene, like in a game engine, then you can always bring them into Blender, and then from there you can take it into your game engine. Like I don't have any CAD files with me to show right now, but like I'm just saying, like, yeah, even this scenario works.
Sir, now after importing this new object, existed object was is that
it's no, it's still there. So what I did right now, I have just hidden everything else. So see, this is my pole, right? If I'll press H, it will just hide off. So technically, a reason why I hid everything was because initially I've scaled up the pole so big that it was basically overlapping with the character. Just to show the character, I just selected everything and I just hit them to just have my character here, except this guy. Press hide, yeah. So I just hid everything, but like everything is still there in my scene.
Oh, okay.
But like I would say, like if we have to model something of this level, it will take a couple of days. Like if we're working around, like a experienced person, if he's working around 8 to 10 hours a day, he'll still take a week or more around to make something like this. Like depending on how complex things we're working on, like it can take days or weeks or even months to finish up certain projects.
Okay.
Okay, anything else like, or like you wanna ask?
No, sir. Thank you. Yes, all.
Okay, okay. Okay. Anyone else they want to ask something else, like even if it's a concept related to 3D, but I haven't shown it here, they can freely ask then.
Sir, I have one doubt. Here, left side, whatever it we are object has in the cubes and those things are available, right? Shall we can able to add that custom design, this one like a poles or whatever it can we add it? I mean, make it that custom design these things, objects or left side.
Yeah. So right now, see,
Yeah.
you're saying like right now I have duplicated this poles here, right? You're saying can I do it with anything custom in design?
No, not like this.
Okay,
For
then.
example, for the new, if I want to add that any, if I want
Okay,
to
let me
create
hide
that new
everything.
anything means based on we are taking the cubes or yeah, from the cube all these things we are making. Okay, similar way, I can I able to add that in this lab in the like how we are capturing the cube here is the library from the library. In that library, shall we can able to add that our custom designed object over here in the mesh. For example, here plane, cube, circle,
Okay,
like that
okay.
is there. Like I want to add it the pole or switchgear like that. Can we able to add in these objects in the existing library?
So ideally, like whatever you said right now can be done, but it is not something recommended. Reason for this is because, so here whatever mesh features we have, right, these are just default shapes from which, see, even though if I'm making a character right now, I was making that pole, or if I'm making a gun or a car, we always start with a cube or a plane because that's like the most primitive geometry ever, and we start from the most primitive level. But if this was something with a complex shape, let's say I have a mobile phone and I added that mobile phone here. So technically that mobile phone won't be primitive in nature. It'll have all of its features, it'll have its curves, it'll have all of its headphone jack, its camera, it's like all of its keys on the side, like all the cameras on front. So because of that, it won't be primitive in nature anymore. So technically, even though we have a mobile, we can't, if let's say for an example, I have an iPhone and I can't give you an iPhone and I can't say to you that make it into a Samsung phone. Either way, if we want to make an iPhone, it'll be a lot more easier to start from this cube rather than changing our Samsung phone into iPhone. It'll be easier to start from this cube. So it's like the more primitive our base shape is, the more easier our workflow will be. Otherwise, if we have a complex shape, we have to like, optimize it in such a way that it's again back to being something primitive and then start working on a newer shape. So ideally, like that's what, if I already have a pole with me, I would rather keep a library with me of all of those FBX files where I have all of my different assets placed, and whenever I want them, I'll import and use them rather than add them here. Because suppose right now while we work, we'll have like hundreds to thousands of different set of shapes. If I'll end up adding all of them here, basically the moment I'll come into my mesh menu, this like my whole viewport would be filled up of different assets which I've imported. So just to keep our workflow easier and cleaner, we don't usually like change whatever primitives we have here. Like ideally, mostly people, they don't even use all of this stuff. They either most of the times either plain cube or a sphere is used. In rare occasions we use a cylinder, but all of the other shapes are also not used, I would say.
Okay, okay, sir.
Okay. Anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, then if still someone wants to ask something, like now's the time. Like any doubt is fine. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Then if there's nothing else anyone wants to ask, then let's go into our next presentation, which would be presented by Pradyumna. Like his presentation is on like basics of animations and basics of lighting and rendering, and from here he'll be taking up everything else. Okay, like thank you for listening to what I had to say today. With this, I'll stop my screen share.
Sir, last one.
Okay, yeah. Sure.
What is the recommended configuration for the continuing this software, sir? Is there any standard 8 GB or 16 GB? Is it required to RAM? Like
So like I would say, in terms of configuration, it depends on what type of work you're doing. So till now, whatever I've shown right now would work smoothly, even though if you had like a 5-year-old PC which was pretty low end, like even if you had a 2 GB RAM with some 1-core processor, whatever I've done right now would still work fine in it. But if you want to work on something like sculpting, which has very high number of detail and all, for that you need a very strong PC. So I would say, based on the type of work which you are going to do, so if it involves a lot of sculpting and rendering and all, then I would say you need a strong PC with a good graphics card, like a minimum of 8 GB graphic card, and like processor must have around like 8 cores and above, which would obviously be expensive. But if it's only modeling, then I would say like even a low level PC should handle Blender easily enough. But that's what I would say, like once you start using, and you'll sort of realize for what you're going to use Blender. Based on that, if you need to upgrade your PC or not, you can always upgrade. But there is no specific limitation that you need to have a minimum level of hardware, only then you can use Blender, otherwise it won't open view. Like such problems don't exist in Blender. So if you just want to try it out and see how it's working, you don't need to buy anything, just try it out and start learning. But if you reach a level where you feel like your PC is being limited because it's not able to handle the load, then you can get a new PC.
Okay.
Okay, like so now Pradyumna would be coming in to give the second half of this presentation on animation and rendering. Okay, with this I'll stop. Thanks for watching.
Thank you so much, Venkat. Hello, everyone. My name is Pradyumna, and for this session, we shall be speaking about the basics of animation, as well as how to create simple physics-based simulations in Blender. So with that, I'll just share my screen.
Hello, Pradyumna.
Yes, Angad.
Can you hear me? Yeah, sorry. Just before you start off your session, just wanted to ask Dr. Vijay-Kumar, sir, do you require like a small break between these two sessions? Because we have completed the first session now by Mr. Venkat. And if you require like a small break before the next session, we can do that now. This would be a good time to take that break, actually.
Yes.
Dr. Vijay-Kumar?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, yes, sir. It's clear.
Yeah, so we were just saying that the first session has concluded. That is on the 3D modeling aspect. And so, you know, if we require a short break before we start the animation and simulation session, I think now would be a good time for a break. So you can just tell us whether you want the break or whether we can just continue with the second session.
Sir, you can continue the second session, sir. No issue.
Okay. So there won't be any need for a break now?
No need of a break, sir.
Okay, then that is fine. I guess that's okay. Pradyumna, that's okay with you, right? You can start off the session.
Sure.
Okay.
Sir,
do you need any break, sir?
I don't need. I think let's get started.